Bhagavad Gita, which is a part of the Indian epic Mahabharata, is deeply rooted in the context of Hindu thought, spirituality, and the nature of existence. In contrast, Plato's philosophy is firmly grounded in the Greek tradition of reason, politics, and the exploration of ideal forms. In the Gita, the central focus is the concept of Brahman, the ultimate reality, which is eternal, unchanging, and formless. This ultimate reality is beyond time and space and manifests as both immanent and transcendent. Brahman is the essence behind everything in the universe, but it is not limited by any physical form or structure. The self, Atman, is ultimately one with Brahman, and liberation, Moksha, is achieved by realizing this oneness. There is a clear notion that individual identity is ultimately an illusion, and true knowledge leads to a dissolution of the ego and identification with the infinite. On the other hand, Plato's ontology, which is centered around the theory of forms, posits that the material world is a shadow of a higher, eternal realm of perfect and abstract forms. According to Plato, the objects we see in the world are mere imperfect reflections of these ideal, unchanging forms. For instance, while we encounter many chairs in the world, the form of a chair is the perfect, eternal concept of chairness, existing independently of any individual instance of a chair. In Plato's view, the material world is not illusory, but it is far inferior to the world of forms, and true knowledge can only be attained by contemplating these higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that true knowledge comes through spiritual realization and direct experience. Knowledge in the Gita is not just intellectual or rational, it is deeply experiential. Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, requires understanding the difference between the material world and the eternal self. In the Gita, knowledge is both revealed through divine guidance and experienced through deep meditation, devotion, and introspection. It is about the transcendence of dualities, the self and the non-self, the eternal and the transient, through wisdom that goes beyond the mind's normal cognitive processes. Plato, however, follows a much more rational and structured approach to knowledge. He believed that true knowledge is attained through dialectical reasoning and intellectual inquiry. Plato's knowledge comes through the philosopher's journey of discovering the forms, which can be apprehended through pure thought, reason, and the cultivation of wisdom. For Plato, philosophical dialectics, a rigorous method of questioning and argumentation, is the primary method for reaching knowledge, especially knowledge of the good, the highest form. There is no place in Plato's philosophy for intuitive spiritual revelation. Knowledge is attained through reason and intellect alone. In the Bhagavad Gita, the concept of Dharma plays a central role in shaping ethical behavior. Dharma refers to one's personal duty in the context of one's position in life, and this duty is not defined by societal norms alone, but by a higher cosmic law. Arjuna, for example, must fight in the war not because of a personal desire for victory, but because it is his duty as a warrior, kshatriya. In the Gita, ethical action is aligned with one's spiritual purpose and is performed selflessly, without attachment to the fruits of action. The ethical teachings emphasize selfless service, karma yoga, where one acts according to Dharma without concern for personal gain, seeing all actions as an offering to the divine. Plato, on the other hand, conceptualized ethics through the lens of virtue and the philosophical ideal of justice. In works like The Republic, Plato outlines the importance of the philosopher king, whose virtue and wisdom allow for the proper organization of the state. For Plato, ethical living involves aligning one's soul with the three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite, and ensuring that reason governs the other two. The ideal state is one where justice prevails, which is achieved when each individual performs their role in society according to their nature and capacity. There is less emphasis on selflessness or detachment from the results of one's actions, and more focus on the realization of virtue through rational self-control and the pursuit of the good. The Bhagavad Gita advocates for an approach where the individual seeks union with the divine, transcending the limitations of worldly identity. The individual soul, Atman, is seen as fundamentally the same as the divine, Brahman, and liberation comes through recognizing this oneness. The societal role is secondary to one's spiritual development, and action in the world must be guided by a sense of detachment and devotion to a higher truth. In contrast, Plato's philosophy focuses heavily on society and its structure. In his vision of the ideal state, individuals must contribute to the common good by fulfilling their designated roles, whether as rulers, warriors, or producers. The individual's role is defined by their capacity, and personal fulfillment is found through justice in the structure of society. Plato is not focused on the idea of transcending the individual ego to reach union with the divine, but rather on how the individual can live harmoniously within the context of an ideal society. The ultimate goal in the Bhagavad Gita is moksha, liberation from the cycle of samsara, birth and death, achieved through the realization of one's divine nature and detachment from the physical world. The Gita advocates for renunciation of the ego and the experience of the self as one with the universe. Liberation is not a mental exercise but a spiritual realization that leads to oneness with the divine. Plato's vision of the soul's journey involves the pursuit of philosophical knowledge and the ascent of the soul to the realm of the forms, where it comes into direct contact with the ultimate form of the good. Liberation, in Plato's sense, is not about transcending the ego or merging with the divine, but rather about achieving philosophical enlightenment, the capacity to see the world not as it appears, but as it truly is in its ideal, unchanging form. The Gita speaks of liberation through spiritual practice and devotion, while Plato's path is one of intellectual enlightenment and philosophical reason.